The South Korean government is assuring the public that the tritium level in waters off Japan's Fukushima is well below the standard limit. At the same time, it's tightening vetting procedures again to clarify where imported seafood has come from. As North Korea reopens its border after well over 3 years and starts bringing back its people from overseas, the government here says it's very concerned about the potential repatriation of defectors. South Korea's joint summertime military exercise with the U.S. now enters an exclusive second phase this week that's expected to involve America's strategic bombers and its newly created Space Force. We take a closer look at what this involvement means. It's August 28, 2023. This is News Center. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We start with a follow-up on Japan's wastewater discharge from the Fukushima nuclear plant that began 4 days ago. Citing TEPCO, the South Korean authorities say the samples collected from seawater near the plant are within the safety standards. However, met by concerns at home, the government vows to take a closer look on imported seafood. Our Song Yoo-jin starts us off.
It's been 4 days since Japan began releasing wastewater from the crippled Fukushima nuclear power plant into the ocean, and so far, test samples show that seawater near the plant is safe. The focus is on tritium, a radioactive form of hydrogen that persists even after the wastewater undergoes purification through the ALP system. Up until Sunday, 1.53 million liters of wastewater had been released. And the Tokyo Electric Power Company, the plant's operator, has been monitoring the radioactivity levels of tritium in the offshore seawater.
We consider tritium radioactivity concentration of up to 700 becquerels per liter within 3 kilometers of the nuclear plant and 30 becquerels within 10 kilometers as safe. As of Sunday, tritium radioactivity concentrations within 3 kilometers of the plant were found to be lower than the minimum detectable level of 4.6 becquerels.
To further address concerns about the potential impact of the discharged wastewater, South Korea's Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries began a special 100-day joint inspection of imported seafood products on Monday involving both government and private entities. They will check whether importers, distributors, and retailers have accurately labeled the country of origin of imported seafood. Roughly 20,000 businesses are set to be inspected.
We are extending the inspection period from 60 to 100 days, compared to the initial inspection carried out between May and June. We will conduct 3 or more visits to each business to ensure proper verification.
Failure to label the country of origin can lead to fines of up to 10 million Korean won, or around $7,500. Those who forge labels could face imprisonment for up to 7 years or a fine reaching 100 million won. And regarding the 3 experts that the Korean government sent to Japan to monitor the discharge, they held their first meeting with the IAEA's Fukushima office after arriving on Sunday. They're discussing with IAEA officials and the Japanese government the duration of their stay and specific tasks they will carry out. This is part of an earlier agreement between Seoul, Tokyo, and the IAEA to send Korean experts to the latter's office every 2 weeks to monitor the wastewater release. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
North Korea has reopened its border, allowing its citizens living abroad to return home, a move seen as a significant shift in its strict border controls. Now, the South Korean government raises serious concerns over the regime repatriating those who have left their homeland. Pei Yun-ji has more.
After shutting itself off from the rest of the world in early 2020 in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, North Korea has finally reopened its borders. The North state media announced over the weekend that it has allowed its citizens living abroad to return home in an easing of virus measures and border controls. But it still required those returning to do 1 week of quarantine. In response, the spokesperson for South Korea's Unification Ministry said Monday that he's worried about the possibility of North Korean defectors arrested and detained in China being sent back home.
Our government is very concerned about the possible repatriation of North Korean defectors in China. We stress once again that they should not be forcibly sent back to the north against their will.
Human rights advocates in South Korea have been voicing similar concerns, as China is reportedly detaining as many as 2,000 North Koreans for leaving the regime without permission. They will likely face severe punishment once sent back home. The Unification Ministry spokesperson also said the North does not appear to have fully opened its borders, as the regime has only granted approval to its own citizens living abroad. He said North Korea is presumed to have faced economic difficulties during its border closure, and that the regime probably made the decision after experiencing many difficulties when all personnel exchanges were blocked. Experts predict the North's announcement will lead to the return of North Korean students and workers, mostly in China and Russia, who are a key source of foreign income for the regime. Also, the North has already signed up to take part in this year's Asian Games in Hangzhou, which will kick off on September 23rd. All eyes are now on whether the regime will send a high-level delegation to the international event, possibly including key officials such as Kim Yo-jong, the powerful sister of Kim Jong-un, and Choi Ryong-hae, to strengthen relations with China. In 2018, Kim Yo-jong made a surprise visit to South Korea during the Winter Olympics held in Pyeongchang. She was accompanied by Kim Young-nam, the head of the Presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly at the time. Peunji, Arirang News.
This week, South Korea's joint drills with the U.S. enters a second phase. It involves all military branches, including the U.S. Space Force, possibly alongside the deployment of U.S. strategic bombers to ramp up readiness. Choi Min-jung takes a closer look at what this involvement means.
For the next 4 days until Thursday, South Korea and the U.S. are conducting Part 2 of their Ulchi Freedom Shield exercise. Unlike the first phase held last week involving the government's civil defense exercise, the second phase is conducted exclusively by the military. It involves the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps of both South Korea and the U.S. It aims to strengthen joint readiness in any possible emergency situation involving provocations by North Korea in the face of the North's advancing military and cyber threats. The U.S. Space Forces Korea, established last year, will also take part in the exercise for the first time. It will play a big role in analyzing Pyongyang's missile and nuclear capabilities. One expert says one of the biggest advantages would be quick information sharing.
There's great significance that the USFK can share real-time information on North Korea's nuclear and missile capabilities with the formation of a space force in the USFK.
It's also highly likely that the U.S. will deploy strategic assets such as B-1B strategic bombers during this exercise.
Having B-1B strategic bombers as part of Seoul and Washington's combined exercises shows that extended deterrence efforts against North Korea are becoming more real.
United Nations Command member states are also scheduled to participate in different capacities. Participating countries are Australia, Canada, France, and more. This time around, there is a total of more than 30 combined outdoor military drills, double that of last year. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The number of new COVID-19 cases is declining, according to the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency on Monday. The KDCA reported 37,000 new infections for last week, down nearly 9.5% from the week before. The reproduction rate, which indicates the number of people each patient infects, has also remained below 1 for 2 consecutive weeks. The health agency expects the ongoing downward trend to continue until early to mid-September. Meanwhile, starting this Thursday, the nation will lower the infection category of COVID-19 from the current level 2 to level 4, the lowest for managing infectious diseases. Following the adjustment, almost all COVID measures, including state support for testing, will come to an end. The consumer price growth at home, which recently went below 3%, is likely to rebound, largely owing to oil price pressures. Moon Hye-ryun reports.
Concerns over rising food and oil prices continue to persist in South Korea as consumers prepare for the Korean Thanksgiving holiday in late September. According to a report released by the Bank of Korea on Monday, persistent heavy rain coupled with extreme heat in the country will likely contribute to price hikes for fresh produce. In July, the price of lettuce and spinach almost doubled, and prices for agricultural goods rose by 4.7% compared to the year before. While the overall on-year consumer price index growth fell to the 2% mark last month, the Ministry of Economy and Finance predicted on Sunday that it will jump back up to the 3% mark over the next 2 months. July's growth rate, measuring at 2.3%, was the lowest seen in over 2 years and came after 5 consecutive months of decline in the on-year increase. Eased inflation was largely attributed to weakening oil prices, but with oil prices rising for 7 weeks in a row in South Korea, this is expected to change. On average, gasoline prices stood at around $1.31 per litre last week, a large jump from $1.18 at the start of last month. This comes on the back of a resurgence in global oil prices, which have gone up since July, with prices for Brent crude oil jumping by around $10 per barrel during the July to August period, and prices in South Korea affected with a 2 to 3 week delay. With the national holiday Chuseok at the end of September into October, the ministry expects high prices to persist with high demand, as consumers buy food and gifts for the holidays. Finance Minister Chu, however, stated in a National Assembly meeting last week that the inflation rate will drop to the 2% mark again following the holiday and maintain an average of some 2% until the end of the year. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Korea may enjoy an extended Chuseok holiday period starting late September and into early October if the top office approves a related request made by the ruling party today, hoping to help the economy. Kim Do-yeon explains.
The ruling People Power Party has made a request to the presidential office to review designating Monday, October 2nd as a temporary holiday, creating a 6-day-long holiday period. Opening the leadership meeting on Monday, the party's chairman, Kim Gi-yeon, announced that the request has been made as South Korea looks forward to its first long holiday since COVID-19 became a Class 4 virus, the lowest designation for managing diseases like the seasonal flu. South Korea celebrates its annual Chuseok holiday or Thanksgiving on Thursday the 28th and Friday the 29th of September. The following Tuesday, October 3rd, is National Foundation Day. The addition of temporary holiday on Monday in between would mean a prolonged 6-day vacation period. Kim also added this could boost the domestic economy through the long holidays, with many schools autonomously already deciding to close on that day. Now that the request has been made, the top office will review the request. Upon formal discussion between the PPP and the government, it will be put on the agenda for a cabinet meeting where members will review its designation. Cabinet meetings usually take place every Tuesday, but it isn't on the agenda for this week's meeting yet, meaning it will likely be September 5th before a decision is made. Back in 2017, then President Moon Jae-in designated October 2nd a temporary holiday, giving people 10 straight days off. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
It turns out that only 1 out of 3 young people here in South Korea see marriage positively. That's according to statistics Korea's research revealed on Monday, which shows a 20 percentage point drop from 10 years ago when it comes to young people's perceptions of marriage, from 56% in 2012 to 36% last year. People aged between 19 and 34 pointed out the financial outlay of a wedding and that marriage is not a necessity as the biggest reasons why they think people aren't getting married. Over half of the respondents also said that having children is unnecessary, even if they do get married. Still, more than 80% agreed to non-marital cohabitation, which was a 19% increase from 10 years ago. In Beijing, the commerce chiefs of the U.S. and China have met amid tense trade-related issues between the world's 2 largest economies. Washington has stressed the importance of its economic relationship with Beijing. Our An Song-jin with the details.
U.S. Commerce Secretary Raimondo stresses it is profoundly important that the world's 2 largest economies have a stable economic relationship. This in remarks made to her Chinese counterpart Wang Wentao in Beijing on Monday, saying that although it is challenging, progress can be made if the two are direct, open, and practical. Wang in response said China is also ready to work with the U.S., adding that the bilateral economic ties are not only significant for the two countries, but also to the world. The U.S. Commerce Department had lifted export controls for 27 Chinese companies just days before her visit, which saw positive remarks from Wang.
China welcomes the U.S. decision of removing the Chinese entities from the unverified list. It shows that the two sides can address specific concerns through communication on the basis of mutual respect.
During her 4-day trip to Beijing and Shanghai, Raimondo, in her meetings with Chinese officials and business leaders, is expected to discuss boosting trade and tourism where both superpowers can find common ground. Raimondo is the latest and the fourth key figure from the Biden administration to visit China after Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, and climate envoy John Kerry. One expert says the U.S. is trying to mend ties with China to boost economic growth, ahead of the U.S. presidential election coming up next year.
Since the 1980s, the ruling power has not won the election when the country's GDP has fallen under 2%. The current economic growth of the U.S. stands around 1%.
As the meeting also comes amid concerns over the faltering Chinese economy, the expert added that Raimondo's visit is likely to bring results that will be beneficial to the economies of Washington and Beijing. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Also on the international front, genetic testing by Russian authorities reportedly affirms the death of mercenary leader Yevgeny Prigozhin in a plane crash that occurred last Wednesday. The Kremlin denies Western speculation that Moscow is behind the crash. Our Lee Kyung-eun has the latest.
Russia's investigators had confirmed that Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin died in a plane crash, completing the genetic test on those on board the private jet that crashed last Wednesday. Russia's aviation agency concluded that Prigozhin and Dmitry Okhin, his right-hand man, were among those on board.
As part of the investigation into the plane crash in the Tver region, molecular genetic examinations have been completed. According to the results, the identities of all 10 dead were established. They correspond to the list stated on the flight sheet.
The plane crash came 2 months after Prigozhin led a failed mutiny against the Russian army's top brass. Russian President Vladimir Putin initially vowed to crush mutiny, calling a stab in the back that could potentially trigger a civil war in Russia. But hours later, a deal came to allow Prigozhin to go into exile in Belarus. After the plane crash, Putin sent his condolences to the families of those who died. Meanwhile, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, who brokered the exile deal, said on Friday that he warned Prigozhin to watch out for possible threats, and he insisted that Wagner fighters will remain in Belarus. But Prigozhin had twice dismissed the warnings.
The second time when he visited me with Dima Utkin, I strongly warned them, lads, you watch out.
However, Lukashenko said that he believed Putin had nothing to do with the plane crash. The Kremlin said on Friday that Western suggestions that Prigozhin had been killed on its orders were an absolute lie. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
Time now to take a look at what's been happening in the world of sports. Joining us in the studio is our sports editor, Paul Need. Evening, Paul.
Evening.
Let's start with badminton, a men's doubles title for the World Championships for South Korea. What can you tell us?
Yes, that's right. A mixed doubles as well. But Korea's men's team of So Sung-jae and Kang Min-hyuk won the gold medal in the men's doubles in Copenhagen on Sunday, local time. They defeated Kim Astrup and Anders Skarup Rasmussen of Denmark 14-21, 21-15 and 21-17. It was Korea's first men's doubles title since 2014. And not only that, but earlier in the day, So Sung-jae won gold in the mixed doubles. He teamed up with Chae Yu-jong and became the first South Korean to win 2 golds at a single World Championship. The women's team of Kim So-young and Gong Hee-young, meanwhile, won the bronze medal.
And speaking of women's competition, An Se-young, she won the women's singles title.
Yes, she did, and actually it was her first ever world title in a women's singles event. An Se-young, who is the current world #1, defeated Spain's Carolina Marin 21-12, 21-10. The 21-year-old became the first South Korean to win a women's singles title in the 46-year history of the event. She's also the first South Korean in 30 years to make it all the way through to the final. It was her 8th title of the season, and she's seen as a gold medal candidate for the upcoming Asian Games in China this September.
And to baseball, Toronto Blue Jays pitcher Ryu Hyun-jin wins his 3rd straight start.
Yes, that's right. He's in good form at the moment since coming back from that long-term injury. But the win came on Saturday local time in an 8-3 win for the Toronto Blue Jays against the Cleveland Guardians. It was the first win in 4 matches for the Blue Jays. But in 5 innings, Ryu held the Guardians to 3 runs, 2 earned on 4 hits. 2 of those hits, though, were solo home runs. He struck out 5 and didn't walk any to make it 3 for 1 in terms of his wins and losses this season. His ERA went up from 1.89 to 2.25. The Blue Jays, though, were without Ryu for Sunday's game and lost 10-7. Up next is the Washington Nationals on Tuesday at 8:07 a.m. Korea time.
And finally, to South Korea's men's national football team, Jurgen Klinsmann has named his squad for the forthcoming friendlies. Any surprise inclusions?
There are, and some surprise exclusions too, I suppose you could say, because Lee Kang-in, he's out due to injury, but of course the likes of Son Heung-min and Kim Min-jae are in. So is Hwang Hee-chan and Cho Gyu-sung, despite the pair picking up injuries. 18-year-old defender Kim Ji-soo is in there as well. He recently moved to Brentford in the English Premier League, and new Celtic winger Yang Hyun-jun has been called up. And there are first call-ups for Gwangju FC midfielder Lee Sun-min and Gimcheon goalkeeper Kim Jun-hong. Korea take on Wales in Cardiff on September the 7th, and then Saudi Arabia in Newcastle on September the 12th. World Cup qualification then begins in November. Klinsmann is still looking for his first win as manager of South Korea, having drawn 2 and lost 2 in 4 games in charge so far.
All right, Paul, thanks for that. See you next week.
Thank you. See ya.
Showers will temporarily subside for tonight, but a stronger low-pressure system will build up overnight. If you take a look at the satellite imagery, rain clouds are slowly entering the country. Parts of Jeollanam-do and Gyeongsang-nam-do provinces will see heavy downpours of up to 150 millimeters. The surrounding regions, including Gyeongsang-do province, will see up to 120. Central regions, including here in Seoul, will see up to 100 millimeters. For those across low-lying regions, please take extra precautions against flooding. Local downpours of 30 millimeters per hour will batter some regions. Periods of heavy rain will vary depending on the movement of the rain clouds. Between tomorrow dawn and the afternoon, the south coast will see torrential downpours. From the daytime to the evening hours, East Seoul Metropolitan Area and Gangwon-do Province will see heavy rain. Rainy spells will dominate for the morning hours. Seoul and Daegu will be starting off at 24 degrees. Highs in Seoul will peak at 26, Gwangju 30, Gyeongju will be topping out at 27 degrees. The entire nation will see rain until Wednesday. For Jeju Island, showers will continue for the remainder of the week. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is News Center for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session is coming up.